ما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى قيام يوم الدين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. May the blessings of Ramadan be with us and the fasts be purifying us externally and internally. Now I know the talk was entitled The Abrahamic Journey to the Unity of God or to God, but I totally became mindless. It's Good Friday and we do need to talk about our blessed Prophet Isa. So I just thought of a few things to say on Nabi Isa salamullah alayh. So bear with me. Reading the Quran, we find that he is quite unique and he's been singled out as a very unique individual and an entity. His coming into this world is by an immaculate conception through the Spirit of God. Similarly, when he leaves this world, his body does not encounter the natural deaths that our bodies encounter, but his cessation or tawaffa is done at the exclusion of the death of his body, similarly to the way we encounter tawaffa in a state of sleep whilst the body still lives on. Again, when it comes to Isa salamullah alayh, it is said to him that people who follow him will predominate upon those who disbelieve in him until the day of Qiyamah. Again, about Isa, the Quran states that there is none from the people of the book, presumably, but that they will believe in him before his death. That could mean the death of Isa or could mean the death of that individual, but it seems to mean the death of Isa. Now, Isa salamullah alayhi was very, very unique. He seems to have been spared the human phenomena as we understand the whole process of birth and death, exploration and growth. Not to say that Isa may not have grown, he may have grown through his human constitution, but he seems to have been a soul that was pretty much accomplished from birth. And then, of course, he might have experienced what it means to be a human. Looking at the verses of the Quran, we can surmise through the positioning of the words within the Quran that Isa could have been a proximate angel. It says in the verse of the Quran that neither shall Isa nor shall the proximate angels stop devoting themselves to God. Now, this mentioning of Isa and the proximate angels together happens in other verses as well. They call for God a son. Glory be to God. They are his devoted servants or angels. They do not precede him in speech and they are compliant with his command. So, in several places, we find within the Quran that Isa is mentioned alongside proximate angels. So, we know Isa salamullah alayhi was something out of the norm. He is not human in the way we understand human beings, yet he encountered humanity and he experienced humanness with its frailties and its difficulties. And maybe Isa has grown through that, maybe he hasn't, maybe he has always been an actualized soul. For the fact that he speaks within the cradle and constructs sentences that are meaningful prior to encountering the world as normal children do in itself is indicative of a fact that he is spared the human process of learning and recognition. Having said all of this, if Isa is a proximate angel, which I believe he is from my reading of the Quran, and I might be wrong, but then how does Isa relate to us so deeply? How is he then a role model for us and a means for us to claim our own light? It obviously shows that the same beauty residing at the core of Isa resides at the core of all of us. The Quran calls Isa Ruhun Minna, that he is a spirit from us. Now, if we can relate to that spirit, then that means we have a spirited side within us as well. And of course, the Quran does say, وَإِذَا نَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, and when I breathe into him of my spirit. And of course, Imam Sadiq has mentioned that spirit is not the spirit of God. God as such does not have spirit, God as God, yes? It's a lofty entity that is designated as the spirit that God attributes to himself, pretty much like the hands that God attributes to himself or the house that God attributes to himself. There is some lofty significance and relevance. But what I'm after is that if the Spirit of God is something that is within human constitution and yet seems to be spared the trials of or the processes of humanity, then that spirit resides at the core of all of us. Now, this is important. Either it is blown within the chest of Adam, as Adam's sculpture was ready to receive a different level of consciousness, or it is something that is blown into every fetus or procured by every fetus through its own existential motion, as we have in the hadith at the 4-month stage. The spirit is procured, and hence the awakening of the dormant human beings, the human soul. Don't get confused by differing words that I'm using today. I'm after a particular, very significant thing here. Now, what is it about Isa that draws 2 billion people to him? What is it about Isa, salamullah alayhi? What is recognized within Isa? What is it about Isa that the Quran celebrates him to this extent? Now look at Isa. When the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is asking for miracles, the miracles are not given to him. Fly into the heavens, fetch from there a book, and then again we shall not believe in your book until we read it. Say, Subhana Rabbi, glory be to my Lord, Hal kuntu illa basharan rasula, am I but a mere mortal messenger? But here, Isa says, Allahumma Rabbana anzil alayna ma'idatan minas sama. O Allah, our Lord, cause there to be descended upon us a banquet from the heavens. And Allah complies, or the heavens comply with his request. Then again, on the day of Qiyamah, we do not find a direct speech with any individual prophet. Yes, the Quran says the day in which we gather the prophets and ask them, Mada ujibtum, what was a response given to you? That is the collective capacity in which the prophets are being spoken of. But Isa is singled out. Even Prophet Muhammad pleads to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran on the day of Qiyamah that my people abandon the Quran. But Isa, Ya Isa ibn Maryam, O Isa, son of Maryam, did you say to people, be devoted to me and to my mother besides God? Now this is a direct speech directed to Isa. Again, he has been singled out. There is something quite special about this prophet of ours, beloved prophet of ours. Now, what is it with him that draws people to him? The Quran singles out his followers. Then you will find the ones most in love with you are the people who say, we are the Christians. Because they have priests, they have monks. And then it says, because they are not arrogant, they have softness in their heart. Ego is not prevalent in them to that extent. Isn't that amazing? You find then that their eyes flood with tears at the recognition of what they hear. You see, when we hear the truth, there is sometimes a barrier within us. The barrier is either because we have recognized a truth of our own and we do not want to be open to anything else. We want to become defensive of what we know. Otherwise, we have this arrogance within our souls. And this soul prevents us from acknowledging the truth that is being given to us. It requires a state of inner purity, lack of arrogance that allows the truth to penetrate within the soul. The Christians' delegations used to come to the prophet, and the prophet used to recite verses, and immediately they would be moved by it, and their eyes would flood with tears. And the flooding of the eyes with tears signifies the deepest sense of recognition of the truth that is at the core of our beings. What that signifies, to me at least, is that their hearts were pure. Again, they do not do takabbur. One. Two, their eyes flood with tears. This is through their devotion and love to Isa salamullah alayhi. What made them recognize Isa was possibly not the example of Isa in how he lived, how he was with his spouse, how he was with his children, because Isa was not somebody who married. But it was that gentle beauty of the Spirit of God that resided within his being that was recognized by those who fell in love with him and those who were around him. And that required a level of purification of the soul. Similarly, Najashi, when the verses were read upon him, his eyes flood with tears. There is a sense of purity with the followers of Isa. Now, I know the Muslim community is very charitable, and especially in the month of Ramadan, but I can't help but notice that when we have crises around the world, it is these non-Muslim brothers and sisters of ours in country like the one we are in right now, or in USA, who empty their pockets in care and concern for the other, not being discriminatory, saying that they are Muslims or they are in the Middle East or they are this or that. Their human concerns prevail. I find that directly an outcome of their association and relation with Isa salamullah alayhi, historically either through their grandparents, parents, or whatever they might have heard of the example of Isa within the churches. So when it comes to Isa, there is something unique going on here. Aside from his special status that is quite clear within the Quran, it is that spirited side of Isa that is prevalent, a state of purity, a state of clemency, a state of love that is recognized deep, deep within the souls that encounter Isa. It is our truth. It is the truth of 8 billion people at once, personified by this figure known as Isa. Now, of course, it would be a mistake to worship Isa, but it would be very accurate to find our truth through Isa. Now, the spirituality of Isa, and I want to talk about this a little bit more in the next khutbah. The spirituality of Isa is also a spirituality yearned for deep within. Look at ourselves and introspect slightly. You know, we are frightened of God. How can you be frightened of God? No, I know. Our human condition is overawed by the majesty of God. I know that. And I know when we stand before God and when He gives us a glimpse of His majestic being, the hearts tremble in awe of God. But that is not fear. That is an existential state of not being able to withstand the might of God. But ours is a state of fear. It's a negative state. Do you not see this? We are frightened of God. We are petrified of God because we have been raised in bodies. Our God is a bodily God. Our God will punish the bodies and feed the bodies. Just think about this carefully. Look at our prayers in the month of Ramadan. Lengthen our lives for us. I'm not saying they are bad. Increase our sustenance for us. I'm not saying it is bad. Keep us safe. But there are 8 billion people who don't pray to God in that way. He has kept them all safe. He has kept them all sustained. He is giving them longer lives. Do you know this? The people who do not belong to Islam in European countries have more life expectancy than people in Muslim lands who are praying to God day and night. They are being killed earlier. Isn't something gone wrong somewhere? The thing that God placed in our hands, lengthening the life, we ask God for that instead of taking a long life. Do you get that? You see, think about this. We say, Allahumma ashbi'a kulla jaya'. Allah, feed all the poor. Allah is saying, you are my hand, you feed the poor. Don't put it back on me. Can you see this? The way in which we think. We say, Allah, lengthen my life. Allah says, your life is in your own hands. Look after yourself and make discoveries and lengthen your life. Feed the poor. Rid yourself of social injustice. It's your job to do this. The only thing I am here for, Allah says, is that you find me, not your bodies. But look at our prayers. Allah, give me paradise, free me from hell. By Allah, by Allah. If any one of you were in the place of God, you would forgive all 8 billion humans. You know that? Your heart will not allow you to see anybody burn. Do you know that? Even your worst enemy, if they were burnt and then their skins replaced and then burnt again and they would be crying in anguish, your godly care would overpower you and you would forgive them. When you're not able to see the worst of your enemies burn, you think your God is going to burn anybody like that? Really? How strange. No. God doesn't burn us, we burn ourselves. That's the point. What Isa taught was, he said, revert deep within, deep within. To be godly is to find that state of purity that is beyond your humanity and your humanness. Let the hearts be cleansed of malice. Let the minds be purified of sin. Let the soul radiate with God. Don't burn your own selves. The kingdom of God is within you and outside you. And that is why He is the Spirit of God. Because the Spirit of God is the closest depiction of the nature of God. You see, I would reach out to God in the way the Imams did. How beautifully spirited people they were. And I know my time is going. But one of the Imams says to Allah, if hell be the only path that brings me to you, then I shall open my arms and say to the inhabitants of hell, the keepers of hell, burn me, for I burn in the love of the one who torments me. Let other than God be washed away. You see, in this month, we need the Isaic approach to God. To say to Allah, oh Allah, but you are not the Allah that is yearned for in there. You are beyond hell and you are beyond heaven. Even if I were to reject you, I would expect you to look after me. That is my expectation of you. Even if I did not worship you, I would expect you to care for me. Oh Allah, don't ask me why I have these expectations of you, but these are my expectations of you. And oh Allah, when have I ever wanted anything but you? I do not want your paradise, I just want you. If you are to be found in paradise, then let me go into paradise. If you are not to be found in paradise, then what cause do I have with these endless bounties? It's another veil upon my eyes. O Lord, you are my Lord. What do I lack after you? Such is the spirited connection with God that is taught by the blessed Isa. And I'm going to explain in a little while or discuss that explained by our beloved Prophet and his progeny. Can we recite a Surah Fatiha for all our marhumin, all those who have gone before us, that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have forgiven all of them, been pleased with all of them, given them all the full share of their lights, and have kept them all in His proximity. Al-Fatiha. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. أما بعد السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The whole process of reaching out to God is not the one in which we supplicate to God in the standard fashion, in the way that we are taught. You see, the du'as of the Imams are, by and large, their personal du'a. They related to God in that way. Now, when we read those du'as, it teaches us about the nature of God and how we can approach God. But that is not the only way to find God. If the Spirit of God resides deep within me, then my calling is there within me. All I need to do is to open up to my own self, and the light of God will yearn itself. We cannot be as eloquent as Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullah alayhi. His words filled with the depth of meaning and the intensity of feeling. I am me with my broken words, but that is what is required right now, that I present myself before God and share with God unashamedly and openly, because He is the only one I have got to share with. The problem that we have with formalistic prayers is that God becomes the other. Ud'uni astajib lakum. Call me, I will respond to you. Inni qareeb ujibu da'wata da'iya idha da'ani. I am near, I respond. You see, when we put a formal veil of prescribed prayer, we are making Him the unapproachable, the other. I need to go through a set of constructed words to reach God. No. Use those words to open up genuinely from within and go beyond those words. Your words are your words. Allah, Lord, Rabbi, Khuda, call Him whatever you want, but reach out from there. Let the barriers break and call out to Him, for that is the only thing we want. We do not want paradise. We are not afraid of hell. We don't want life. We want to know who we are. We want ourselves. How strange is our existence that we are lost to ourselves and we are trying to look for something else. Can a person lost to his own self find anything else? Tell me. I'm lost to my own self. I have assumed myself to be this body, and hence I'm gripped with so much fear. I get so offended when people don't appreciate me and people swear at me. I become so elated with joy when people praise me. I have become the body that is going to soon die and decay and become dust. A body from whom the maggots are going to feed, and later on it's going to be transformed into some plant and some tree. That's the thing that I'm living for. My money, my palaces, what is all of this? I'm lost to my own self. How can I even pray to God? It's a pretentious person coming there, not even knowing who he is. Forgive my severe words. I think it's the fast that's getting to me and the fluctuation of sugar in my head. Salawat. Reaching out to God does not mean praying to God in the way that we are accustomed to. Yes, pray to God day and night so that God does not become alien from our minds. But there comes a point when we need to open up, we need to talk with God as the Quran explains. And when they are caught within rough seas, at that time they lose all sense of protocol. They plead to God, crying out and in awe and fear. There the formality goes. All the formality fades away and the real person comes in front of God. That is the real person that needs to find God. And then again, it was never a question of formalistically understanding God and doing these formal prayers. Can you imagine? The one who has created trillions of galaxies, do you think he is so concerned about my ruku and my sujood? Come on. What is that? And my khums and my zakat? He is feeding microscopic creatures in my body as I'm alive and talking with you. He is feeding trillions of stars and zillions of planets and so many creatures. What would he do with khums and zakat? Think about this. This is for us to regulate ourselves. It is not God. God is beyond. So the question was never of finding God in the way we are after God. The question was recognition of God and then realization of God. Recognition of God is that God is beyond this paradise and hell and namaz and sajda and fast and hajj. He is beyond all of these things. He is the truest calling deep within. That's the recognition of God. Realization of God is that we become spirited creatures like God, where the qualities of the Spirit prevalent within Isa salamullah alayhi were those of clemency, of love, of forgiveness, of innocence. These are the qualities of the Spirit. Now read the du'as of the Imams on the month of Ramadan and see the spirited parts of their du'as. They will be the one that appeal the most. The du'as that appeal the most to the heart are those prayed in the depths of the night by these wonderful Imams. The spirited portion of those du'as, where there seems to be no veil between them and God. It is they speaking as they are to their God upon whom they have a right given by they themselves without any embarrassment, without any shame. And I'm going to repeat this sentence from Imam Zainul Abidin and then I'll finish. And of course, we've got the night's lectures in which we will talk about spirituality. And listen to these words carefully, and I've repeated them often. The fourth Imam says, O Lord, I seek forgiveness from you of the sins that I have committed, even though I know that as I seek forgiveness, that I intend to sin again. And after your forgiveness, I will revert to my sins. Who can speak with God like this? He says, but oh God, I have sinned not because of my lack of reverence for you. I sin only because I am a weak person and I'm prone to forgetting you at times. And then he continues and he says, oh Lord, but every time I have sinned, you have concealed my faults and forgiven me. O Lord, your benevolence encourages me to sin. Who speaks like this? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen, wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Muhammadin al-Mustafa, wa ala aliyin al-Murtada, wa ala Fatimat al-Zahra, وعلى الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بكربلاء وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي وحجة الله بن الحسن القائم المهدي المنتظر. اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه واجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.